So I hope you had a refreshing coffee break. We're now off to our second and third panel. We will merge those a little bit. And the topics, non, tu peux laisser ouvert, comme ça il y a plus d'aération. Je trouve que c'est. Hein? Oui, bon, 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 ça dépend un peu si les s'il y a des no courant d'air persons in the room. So, but if you really feel, there's also the chair I formerly had available that should be less. So our topic, or first topic for today, will be the almost eternal question: digitalization versus old school methods, what to choose and how to choose. And a bit intertwined with that, of course, the question, what's going to be the future of law teaching? Now, I think I talked about an almost eternal question, about a very classical question, because of course, within the LPIS group and also within other fora, there was also always a small technological and pedagogical elite discussing those questions. I remember very interesting to watch and very entertaining videos about the flipped classroom from Meth University, already being around years ago. But nevertheless, I think all of us just came into contact with that question, not with the question of what to choose and how to choose, but with this technological innovation in mid-March 2020, when ordinary life came to a grinding stop because everyone feared of being exterminated by some sort of virus. And so everybody retired to their caves and tried to get in, to keep in touch in some way. And so those methods of teaching, digitalization, came into the minds of everybody, also of those who are not so, let's say, intimate with those modern means of communication. So now everybody is more or less confronted to that question. And of course, now we have, or we might have a choice again. We really have to think about what we do. And of course, there is also the urge of the new one, the lure of innovation. Everyone's saying, there are new toys around, we could try those. But still, I mean, we're a bit of a special crowd because legal education is a people business. It's a people industry. Teaching people stuff is intrinsically linked to people. But furthermore, legal education is a people business about a people business, because law in itself is all about people, about their more or less specific needs, about communication. And so we think we have to think carefully about what we do. And I have the impression that now Zoom fatigue has taken over somewhat. We also became aware of that human factor, of the richness of direct communication, of directly interacting with other people without the bias of those online means, the really also having coffee together or wine or spirits. So it's all something we need to think about And I think that it's going to be it's a discussion that's going to be going on forever. It actually still seems to be something that needs to be calibrated and recalibrated all over again. And I am very, very happy to have a long-standing expert on innovation in legal teaching on the floor today. So let's welcome Professor Dr. Arndt Künnecke here to the floor with the flying classroom. Dear Arndt, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Gerhard, for the kind introduction, and thanks to the Elpis family for giving me the opportunity to share some other teaching practice of mine with you. Unfortunately, I did not arrive by plane to Fribourg. I came by train, but with 2 hours delay. So again, it makes me feel this is the better means of transport probably for me. And of course, it better fits also with my topic. The topic of this panel was, I needed to recall it again, digitalization versus the old school, what and how to choose. And my part, in fact, with this flying classroom is kind of in the middle. It's not that modern digitalized thing, but of course the cockpit probably in the planes are very much digitalized. But I would present you this flying classroom as an idea because also the old school methods, at some point they can be transformed or upgraded because certain things I think you cannot teach or experience in the digital world. So let's take you on a ride with my flying classroom. And first of all, I was confronted with the starting point, the task, how to offer a 1-week intensive course for about 15 to 20 students at my home university. The target group were students of public administration. So then, of course, you think, how could you fill this task this week with some content? And my challenge at that time was how to deliver a course on a certain topic, which I was free to choose and to create in an innovative and also exceptional way. So I did not want to stay inside the classroom at my university because I'm doing that all day. So that was the challenge. And thinking about it, now it comes back to the old school, because I remembered when I was young, I liked very much a book by a German author called Erich Kästner. It was written in 1933, and it was called in German Das fliegende Klassenzimmer, which means the flying classroom. And very short summary of the content. It was about students, pupils of a boarding school. Before their Christmas holidays, they created and rehearsed a theater play, and they called it the flying classroom. And the content was that they wanted to perform a play. Here you can see the guys in this plane. They wanted to create it the following way. The story is about that a teacher, a geography teacher, takes his class to the spots they talked about in their geography lesson. So, for example, to Mount Vesuvio in Italy, to the North Pole and the pyramids in Egypt. And this was the main idea of this theater play. And I thought, that sounds good, because I loved the movie, which was also on TV at some time when I was young. So I thought, wouldn't it be possible to take my class to some spot to deliver a lecture or to deliver this intensive course about a certain topic? And then, of course, you start your sketch and start with making a concept. And certain things came into my mind. The first thing was that I tried to present a topic or a subject ostensibly and in its very entirety, not just a part of it delivering knowledge inside the classroom. I kind of wanted to make the students also touch, feel the topic itself. But how can you do it inside the classroom? Maybe by delivering some nice food and catering service, but this is not what I'm used to be, and this is not what my university would sponsor, I guess. So I thought the best way to do it is to take the students to the spot, to a certain country, to a certain city, which is the core of the course I created. And when we are there inside the country or inside a nice city, how to deliver the course. And it's by lectures, by some presentations. Of course, discussions are very important to get closer to certain topics. And also my idea was take the students to certain state institutions, to certain international organizations and NGOs who are located, have their headquarters or at least some dependents in that city, in that country. And my idea was not just taking the class outside somewhere to deliver something I could do in person in my own classroom in Germany, but to invite experts from that country who know much more and much better about the topics concerned and related to the country than I could. So the idea was start to do some kind of tandem teaching. I'm the home instructor, so I'm kind of the moderator of the whole course still, but I invite local experts making presentations, giving lectures about certain topics of the whole class. And the idea was not just getting this theoretical input by the experts, but also because my students are from the public administration sector, also trying to make them learn something about the practice, not just to get some lecturers, but also some practitioners who could say something about their work in the field. And the last thing, of course, we experienced ourselves yesterday. It's nice to have some common conferences or panels or events inside a conference or a classroom, but as we would say in German, the salt in the soup is social contents. And so my last part of the sketch was social and intercultural activities I would like to do with my students being somewhere else. And having taught in different countries, different cities all over Europe, the idea was bringing together my students with students from that country so that they could, in an informal way, get to know each other and learn much more than I could just deliver in a form of a lecture or a presentation. So these things need to be prepared. That's the concept, but how to fill it with content somehow. So the first thing is to find a proper topic. Mainly, the approach was find something comparable, because when you go to a certain country, you can compare that legal system with your own legal system. So I'm the expert for Germany. We go to a different country and there we find experts on that legal system. So this was the general task. And of course, when you go somewhere with a group of students, we talked about it yesterday, you need to take into account the travel costs. How much is transport going there? How much is the accommodation? So the place you go to needs to be feasible and financiable for the students. Then the other question is, how can you find facilities where to deliver this classroom when you fly somewhere? And me working at a federal university, federal state university in Germany, the privilege is that I could just ask some federal institution for help, for assistance. So one of the chances I had was calling the German embassy or the German consulate and say, I need a room for my students, me and my students, at least for 2 days, the starting day and the last day for the discussions. Or the other way was, for example, when I was in Turkey, I managed to find a place, a classroom at my old university. So you could also choose some partner universities offering you some facilities. And then, of course, trying to deliver some special content by local experts, you need to find them somehow. And for that, of course, we are in our ELPIS family, ELPIS network. It always helps when you have your own network. When you know people you can ask who might help you to find some interesting experts in that country, in that city. And then I also saw it as part of my responsibility, not just to leave the students alone in a place they don't know, because when I take the students with my flying classroom to somewhere, it's usually a place I know quite well. I've been there many times before, so I also know what are nice places for having lunch or dinner together, for having some typical social activities there. and also integrating some cultural program. But as it is not just a fun trip, it was not a party aeroplane like somebody supposed to be. No, it's work. And when the students sign up for that course, they also need to be assessed somehow. So for me also, the other part of the preparation was to design some student assignments. At my university, it's mostly that the students were required to write some so-called seminar protocol about some speech, about some presentation, to summarize it and put it in some specific form, and that it was on me to grade it. Yes, so when preparation is done, the engine is running hot and you need to get ready for takeoff. And then it's on me, being the pilot, to press the start button and to make the students be equipped with their laptop or whatever they have on the run. So in the sky, we were 3 times so far. I went to 3 different directions with my students. First one was my second home, Istanbul, in the year 2019. Second one was in Ukraine, in Kiev, 2020. And the last one was in Prague in 2021. And let me give you just a quick idea about what I was doing there. So topic for my trip to Turkey was, so frankly speaking, first of all, I'm thinking about a place and then I'm trying to design the program around. And for Turkey, it was the easiest to talk about the problems of the accession process. So in fact, it was called the accession to the EU, the case of Turkey. We started at my home university, destination was Istanbul, and we took the plane as means of transport. And just a rough survey about the program I had. I used to start in every of these flying classroom sessions with an introduction given by myself. Usually in Istanbul was in the classroom at my own university, or we could also have the room in the consulate, to get into the topic together somehow. So this is definitely the task of the pilot, of the teacher, of the captain, which is me. And then for Turkey, for the students, it's important to learn something about the history of Turkey, because without the history, you don't understand the current feelings, the current thoughts, the current situation of Turkey. Another part is the relations between Turkey and the European Union, because they already started at the beginning of the 60s, and still Turkey is in front of the doors of the European Union. So this was something to reveal to the students, but not by me. I was taking the European part, and our Turkish colleagues or former Turkish students are the experts in for showing and explaining some part of the Turkish view on the relations with the European Union. Then one big area were the problems occurring within the negotiations, just to mention the human rights issues, the Kurdish issues, Cyprus, and so on. And again, it's so much more fruitful when a Turkish expert explains the Cyprus issue to the German students, because then they understand the Turkish position, and I can say we Europeans see it that way. So this is the way of team teaching I try to organize, so that the students at the end always had 2 different opinions, and they could find and build their opinion on their own. Then another part was about the refugee crisis, because we read about it, but we never talked with somebody who was on the spot. And also the failed coup d'etat as topic for showing the problems of rule of law within Turkey. And then it always ends up, you can't see it here behind the other faces, like an outro, like a final discussion on the final day, to collect the experiences, to ask the students about their expectations when they come and how it developed, what kind of opinion, what kind of evaluation they have about the topic and the country at the end. Just one example of a program point to show you how I try to combine the topic with the place and the experts. Topic was the state of the rule of law after the failed coup d'etat. For that, we went to the Istanbul Bar Association and we talked with some constitutional lawyers who really frankly explained us the big problems of this new presidential system. Next slide, next topic, legal system in transition. We went to Kiev. Starting from my home university again, we took the flight to Kiev, met there to get to learn something about Ukraine. And again, Ukraine for the Germans is a pretty unknown country. I went there in 2020, so again, you need to give the students some kind of introduction yourself. At the beginning, we were lucky to get some room at the German embassy, so that was the venue. We read for the first and the last day. And then we learned lots about the history of Ukraine, because again, you only can understand parts of the Ukrainian problems. That is kind of this divided country when you get to know something about the history. But me being German, it's hard to explain the Ukrainian history. It should be done by some Ukrainian. So we invited an expert, an historian, for doing that. Then we had very interesting other stops at the Ministry of Justice, talking about the transition process towards the European Union integration. We went to the EU delegation, so got the other perspectives, so how the EU assessed the state of harmonization by Ukraine. We went to the UAAM, which is the European Union Advisory Mission, so mainly trying to strengthening the Ukrainian security, army, police, and so on. And we also went to the OSCE mission. These were the ones doing work on the spot in the Donbas area before the war, of course, because that was 2020, being there on the contact line, explaining and showing how the situation is there and talking about the conflict. Again, much better being done by the experts there than me staying in my classroom in Germany. Ends up again with an outro, so the final discussion there. One day, which was probably not for me only, but also for my students, the most impressive was a visit at the Ministry of Justice about the legal reforms. And I benefited so much from the context I had before, because I was teaching Ukraine from 2013 on, and some of my former students are working in the state administration. And one guy was working in the Ministry of Justice, and he said, Arndt, I'm trying to organize with the Minister of Justice. I said, yeah, of course. But at the end, really, the Minister of Justice on the 5th of March, just about 10 days before everything was on lockdown, he made a reception for us, and the Minister of Justice took himself 1 hour of his time for a Q&A session with my students. And that was very interesting, because he was openly speaking about things he would not say in public. For example, when we asked, a student asked him about the situation in Donbas and Crimea, he said, frankly speaking, Crimea is lost. We will never get it back. If you would say that in public, would have been his last day in office. And at the end, this is also something I will never forget. COVID time, and some of the institutions were even afraid of receiving us. The Minister of Justice, when he said, sorry guys, I need to go back to real work, went along the lines and was shaking hands with each of my students to say goodbye. So this is something you cannot deliver in a normal classroom. This is something which is only being experienced abroad. Last trip I was able to do was to Czech Republic after the borders reopened again. So my topic was how other countries deal with COVID, and I went to the Czech Republic from Brühl to Prague. And the program there was again introducing the whole course, the idea I had in the German embassy. Then we learned from a professor from Charles University about the COVID restrictions in the Czech Republic, the problems they had with the legislation. And then the enforcement measures. I will show you that was also by some expert at the police academy. Then we talked about the border regime, because Czech Republic is bordering Germany, many Czechs working in Germany, vice versa. So what happened there? How did they solve the problem when each country closed the borders? Another colleague from Charles University was talking about sports events, how professional sports events were regulated, how transfers with professional sportsmen could be dealt with during the pandemic, and how they managed it with the big events. And then what I mentioned here, student exchange, again, was one of the highlights, because I managed to bring my German students together with a couple of 60 students from the Czech Republic in a beer garden, and they should talk about their experiences during the COVID times. This again is something they keep in mind. This is the social context you can just provide on the spot, because my German students did not know any Czech one before. So this was another opportunity to get into the topic a bit deeper. So one day, again, as an example, when we talked about the enforcement of COVID measures, we went to the police academy. My dear friend Harald Scheu from the Charles University, who also works at the police academy, was so kind to organize that event for me. We could talk also with him and some police officers to get to know the problems in practice. So this is to give you some idea about what my flying classroom concept is about. And then the nicest trips also come to an end sometime. So you're going back, you're flying back home. And yeah, you wait at the luggage claim for the things which you take back home. And the luggage was much heavier than before, not just because of what the students bought as some souvenirs, but also because of the content they took home. It's not just about the knowledge, it's also about the experiences and the inspiration. Why I'm mentioning inspiration? Because really quite many of these students who took part in these seminars afterwards came to me and said, Mr. Künnecke, we would like to use part of the topic as topic for our diploma thesis. And for that, also very important, what you take home are contacts. Like we do exchange some business cards here. They could also talk with the local experts. And in general, we invited them, for example, for dinner. So my students also had some informal chance to talk with them. So the enrichment and the baggage claim was something, I guess, you should not normally take home when they come to classroom with their backpacks. What are the benefits? I won't talk about the disadvantages because the disadvantage, of course, it's the cost. But anyway, what is the big benefit for me and for the students? The old way is like you deliver some content of classes inside the classroom, even if we talk about different legal concepts, different countries, and so on. And my idea was, I do not want to just deliver knowledge. I want my students to experience and explore a subject on the spot by local experts, me being the instructor from the home university, like moderating everything, but I wanted them to experience it by all senses. And that not just means by listening and watching like we do now in this presentation, it also means what we experienced yesterday here at the Elpis meeting, because we were outside the classrooms, outside of Fribourg University. And what did we do? We went to the mountain areas and we could inhale the fresh mountain air. We were at the chocolate factory, could inhale the smell of chocolate and also taste the chocolate. But the highlight, of course, to taste Switzerland was this typical fondue from Fribourg. And this is what I mean by... And the sound of cows. Yes, somebody did not sleep well, I hear. This is what I mean by trying to explore, experience a topic by all senses, because these things you cannot experience by staying home. And I also did not stay home. I had the chance to participate here in this Elpis meeting. I'm grateful for that. And thank you very much for listening.